Vault 4 was a poster vault for Vault-Tec. We see it in a pre-war commercial starring Cooper Howard. This wasn't a set. This wasn't a fake vault. This was a real vault. Cooper Howard was walking the halls of Vault 4, showing the American public exactly what to expect if they purchase a spot in a vault. This commercial is, in fact, a bit too honest. We see the words "test subjects" on a sign directly above this door in this commercial. I wonder if that concerned anybody before the war. At any rate, we learn from this commercial that Vault 4 was inhabited before the bombs dropped. It wasn't inhabited by everyday run-of-the-mill vault dwellers. It was inhabited by the scientists tasked with running the vault.
And will be living and working right here in Vault 4, leading a community governed entirely by scientists.
Specializing in the effects of radiation on human DNA. Wait a second, did you say living down here? Well, there hasn't been a nuclear incident, has there?
No, not yet, but our family and a group of 80 volunteers will be conducting a 5-year trial of Vault 4.
A vault led by scientists, running experiments on the effects of radiation on human DNA. It's important to note that there's no indication that this vault was run by any other company but Vault-Tec. In my video on Vault-Tec Revealed, we covered the big roundtable meeting towards the end of the series, where we learned that Vault-Tec gave possession of some of their vaults to a number of other companies to run their own experiments. This was all part of the Great Game, to see which experiments would lead to a better human civilization. Bud Askins of Vault-Tec had his own experiment. That was the experiment with his Bud's Buds of Vault 31 and the connected vaults of 32 and 33. But with Vault 4, we learn that Vault-Tec was doing other experiments besides Bud's experiment. Vault 4 was not part of Bud's Buds. It was also not run by any other company but Vault-Tec. The show is corroborating what we already know of Vault-Tec, that they had a number of experiments going on, including this one concerning scientists running a vault and experimenting on human DNA, and Stanislaus Braun's experiments with the Gek, and so on, all unaffiliated with Bud and his experiment. But Mr. Hawthorne also said that Vault 4 would have 80 volunteers. Well, with a big sign over the door that says "Test Subjects," I think we know exactly what those volunteers were volunteering for, and that they probably didn't know. But what happens when the volunteers run out? We're talking about an underground nuclear shelter here that's supposed to last for decades, even centuries. What happens to Vault-Tec's experiment when the 80 volunteers end up dying due to the experiments? Well, Maximus and Lucy learn exactly what happens when they stumble upon the Hawthorn Medical Laboratories, which this sign tells us is a division of Vault-Tec. And indeed, when the camera zooms out over the parking lot, we see a huge Vault-Tec logo, and a parking lot that's suspiciously small for a hospital. From all appearances, this looks like a hospital, and after the bombs dropped, hospitals are excellent places to scavenge for medical supplies. That is why Lucy and Maximus came here to begin with, in search of medical supplies. But the Hawthorn Medical Laboratories wasn't just any hospital. Upon entering the big double doors, scavengers are greeted by an office space, not a waiting room or a lobby or triage. It's an office space, with terminals that all still work, desks that appear to be untouched over 200 years after the apocalypse, and lights in the ceiling that guide the scavenger down a hallway, pointing them in a direction. Go this way for medical supplies. And at the end of the hallway, what do we find? A big door that says medical supplies. This is it, the scavengers say. We're almost there. We're about to find a stash of stim packs. But upon opening the door and entering the room, the scavenger finds a fake door on the other side. The door locks behind him. Gas floods from the ceiling, and then Post-war scavengers are dumped into an intake room. Lucy and Maximus fell into intake room number 7. We see a sign on the wall, caution, falling objects. Of course, these falling objects were people, though I wonder exactly how they happened to fall perfectly and neatly onto these stretchers. Perhaps they didn't. Perhaps the gas knocked them out and they were moved onto the stretchers afterwards. Regardless, scavengers would be dropped into these intake rooms, with windows overlooking the Vault 4 atrium. Now, when Lucy and Maximus fell into one of these intake rooms, they had to stay here for a little while to make sure that they weren't bringing any contaminants into the vault. But after a brief pan out, we see that the intake room that they fell into is none other than a test subject's room. Room 604. The very same test subject's room, room 604, that we saw in Cooper Howard's commercial before the bombs dropped. When Vault 4 ran out of its 80 volunteers, it was able to continue its experiments by luring in wounded and starving survivors from the surface. The hospital was a trap designed to feed people into these intake rooms, whereupon they were taken by Hawthorne and his scientists to the experiment labs on the 12th floor.
Stay out of level 12. Obviously, we'd prefer you not go there.
What's on level 12 and why can't we go there?
We don't talk about that. Jeez, what's the matter with you?
Sorry, I
You should go now.
What?
There we learn more details about the type of experimentation done on these people. Now, I can't show this on YouTube, but I'll try to describe it as best as I can. Like a Madonna NFT, we find a woman giving birth to strange creatures. She sits on a chair, partially submerged in water, and the creatures she gives birth to immediately turn on her and begin to devour her. There are pods filled with more of these women, cryogenically frozen in time, still pregnant with these hybrid monsters. And we find out exactly what these creatures look like as adults when Lucy walks by a specimen tank. Vault 4 was the origin of the gulper. At least, the gulper as it appears on the West Coast. The West Coast gulper is very different from the salamander-like gulper that we're familiar with from Mount Desert Island, as explored during the Far Harbor DLC of Fallout 4, and in West Virginia during the events of Fallout 76. The West Coast gulper is larger, paler, with more human-like eyes, and of note, its mouth is filled with human fingers. And it's by exploring Vault 4 that we understand why. The gulper is a human-monster hybrid, a result of the experimentation that went on in Vault 4. These scientists wanted to see what the effects of radiation on human DNA would do. And so they crossbred humans with radiation-resistant creatures, resulting in monsters like the gulper. These monsters that somehow got loose and began inhabiting the waters of the West Coast. And perhaps we learn exactly how these creatures got loose from Vault 4 when Lucy is shown a video, the last words of Mr. Hawthorne before his entire experiment failed.
Overseer Hawthorne, final log entry.
At this point, it would be irrational of me not to acknowledge that these may be my last words.
But despite our results here, I want to reiterate that a society governed by scientists is the ideal social structure.
What happened here should not be used as a case study for what happens when scientists are given unregulated control.
And hybridizing humans with radioactive resistant species still has potential. Our test subjects were less compliant than we expected.
The test subjects rebelled. Overseer Hawthorne's experiment in Vault 4 failed. The scientists were all destroyed, but the subjects lived on. They stopped all experiments, released all healthy captives, and cryogenically froze any woman who was already pregnant with these creatures and who would have been consumed by them. And for the last 200 years, the descendants of these victims have been taking care of these women.
In the lab, I saw your doctors.
Trying to ease the pain of the poor souls your people lured into this place.
And these survivors passed on to their descendants any mutations they received as a result of these hybridizing experiments done to them by Oxhorn and the other scientists. And over 200 years after the bombs dropped, we find people, residents of Vault 4, with a variety of mutations. There are a number of residents with body parts where there should not be body parts, noses on foreheads, cyclopses missing their second eye. There are even some with more animalistic features and bioluminescence. The scientists may have all been killed, but their victims, the subjects, survived. And they're the ones who inherited Vault 4 after the scientists died. They elected a new overseer. They created their own Vault Society down here, a society that has lasted 200 years, and they also passed on their mutations to their children and their children's children. But while exploring Vault 4, we noticed that some people have mutations, some people don't. But this is explained by the overseer.
Because so many people here seem to be refugees from the surface.
Tell me about it.
I don't understand. If you don't like people from the surface, then why do you keep taking them in?
It's a policy from before my time. What, you don't take in surface dwellers in your vault?
Well, to be honest, no. No, I think what you're doing here is a really good thing. I saw what was left of Shady Sands, and an entire city just destroyed in an instant.
And that was a tragedy. So we took our share of them in and gave them a home, because it's what we do.
The experiment of this vault involved bringing people in from the wasteland. That's a directive that has not changed. What has changed is the experimentation. These people were survivors of Vault-Tech's evil experimentation, and they weren't about to let that happen to anyone else. People still stumble into Vault 4 through the trap laid for them by Vault-Tech, but instead of experimenting on them, the survivors of Vault-Tech's experiments embrace these people as new Vault residents. And this is exactly what happened after Shady Sands was destroyed sometime after 2281. The entire town was obliterated. Most people died, but there were survivors. These survivors were sick, injured. They needed medical supplies. And so many of them stumbled into Vault 4, the same way Lucy and Maximus did, the same way so many survivors of the nuclear apocalypse of 2077 did. But when the survivors from Shady Sands got here, they didn't become test subjects. They were given food. They were given shelter. They were embraced by this society.
We can't thank you enough for letting us in and taking care of us.
It's what we do here. I was born on the surface.
You're from Shady Sands.
Many of us are. We were lucky to find such a hospitable community here in Vault 4.
It's while in this intake room that Lucy and Maximus have a rather awkward scene. They have a conversation about sex that's a bit cringe-inducing.
You want to have sex?
You mean use my cock?
Yeah.
I don't know. That weird thing could happen.
What weird thing?
It gets all big and hard like a big pimple and then it pops.
In a previous video, I commented on how this seems out of place. It's awkward, and it doesn't really mesh well with the rest of the show that has much better dialogue. But upon thinking about it, I might have an explanation. When Maximus falls down into this room, we see a bunch of gas first jet down from the ceiling. When they appear at the bottom of this room, they're both passed out. Clearly, this gas knocked them out, but perhaps it also did something else. Perhaps it increased their libido or lowered their inhibitions. And this would make sense knowing the experiment in this vault. Perhaps this experiment would have been made easier if every woman who falls into the vault is already pregnant. And what better way to make them pregnant than to dose them up with horny chems so that they copulate while in the intake room? With a pregnant test subject, they can then inject DNA into the egg or the embryo or alter it in some way to conduct their experiment. If that's not the explanation, then I have a rather hard time explaining this pretty weird dialogue. Now, by talking with Overseer Benjamin, we not only see the physical defect of his Cyclops eye, this mutation that he inherited from his ancestors, but we also get the impression that there might be some cognitive decline in the descendants of Vault-Tech's test subjects. Because Overseer Benjamin exhibits a number of odd behaviors during his conversation with Lucy, including his refusal to call her by her real name.
I'm from a vault?
So you are Goosey McLean.
Oh, no, it's Lucy.
Nope, it says Goosey.
He insists on calling her Goosey. I mean, even if we were to explain it by saying that he only has one eye and therefore lacks depth perception and probably misread it, he was still audibly corrected by Lucy and still chose to go with Goosey. He leaves cups of coffee out on his desk to grow over with mold.
I grabbed a moldy one.
He doesn't understand why his jokes might be insensitive.
But it's like you can't make a funny joke about it without offending these guys. I mean, one funny joke I told on maybe 10 occasions.
What was the joke?
I forget. All I know is it was a huge bomb.
And yet this guy is the Overseer. How does that happen? Well, Overseer Benjamin is a bit of a comical character. He isn't taken very seriously. Even during the moments of the story where he's supposed to be very serious, he's pretty hilarious. But Birdie is very different. She meets Lucy and Maximus when they first arrive in the vault. She's coherent, she's intelligent, she's sympathetic. She's at Overseer Benjamin's side throughout most of the major scenes, and in fact, she takes over many of the major conversations.
Your ignorance cannot excuse your cruelty. You have infected our home with violence, and now you must pay the price.
Any questions or concerns beyond foosball or pencils or bathrooms? Birdie's available.
She was the one who saw Maximus eyeing their only fusion core and managed to divert his attention away from it by giving him a home and a goodie basket.
How about you sleep in a room of your own tonight? Have a hot shower.
And when you say hot shower, what does that mean exactly?
She was the one who laid down Lucy's sentencing after she went to level 12 against their explicit orders.
It doesn't matter where you come from or what you believe. You deserve safety. Unless you threaten that peace.
And she was the one leading the ritual that the survivors of Shady Sands participated in.
To bring back Shady Sands, blood must spill.
It appears to me that though the Overseer is Benjamin, a descendant of the original victims...
You're from here?
5 generations, and proud of it.
His ancestors were used as lab rats by the original residents of Vault 4 until the lab rats rebelled.
The creature in the video was actually my great-uncle Peter on my mom's side.
It's Birdie who runs the day-to-day affairs inside the vault. And what we see here, I think, is actually really kind of sweet and beautiful. The survivors of Shady Sands fell into Vault 4. The people of Vault 4 embraced them with open arms. The Shady Sands survivors saw that these people, who so kindly embraced them, weren't exactly playing with a full deck of cards. And instead of using that to their own advantage, taking over Vault 4, calling Vault 4 the new Shady Sands, and expelling all of the original inhabitants, they likewise embraced the original dwellers of Vault 4. Instead of trying to overthrow Overseer Benjamin, Birdie helps him. She supports him, even though he's probably getting her name wrong. One of my livestream viewers actually brought this to my attention. He calls her Birdie. She even signs her name Birdie, but it's possible that her name was really Gertie, and that he just misread it like he misread Lucy's name, and Birdie just rolled with it and said, yeah, okay, I'm Birdie now. In Vault 4, we see a society that's the best the Wasteland has to offer. There are 2 cultures that are very different. Descendants of the test subjects, who are weird in their own ways, and survivors from Shady Sands, who are weird in their own ways.
No, we need to leave. Right now. These people are insane.
Yeah, they're like you. A little weird, but nice.
The mutated descendants of the original test subjects don't really want to get involved in all of these weird Shady Sands rituals.
What's going on?
It's a surface dweller tradition. It can get a little rambunctious for my taste.
And the overseer may think they're a bit more primitive than he would hope.
And if you're unfamiliar with how the bathrooms work, just ask. We've had incident after incident with newcomers. And when you turn the little handle up top, it all goes away.
Yep. That's how a toilet works.
These people, am I right? Well, you won't find anyone more open-minded than me. But they come in here with their smelly food and their weird ideas. But these newcomers, let me tell you, if you want to get elected, you have to respect their traditions and tolerate them and not call them surfies. It's awful.
But the two communities respect each other. They've embraced each other. There's no power struggle here, and they manage to find a way to live together. When Lucy and Maximus arrive here, they're given free medical care. They're embraced by this community. They're given a home.
And once again, welcome to Vault 4. We're glad to have you.
For the first time in his life, Maximus is given something for free, without being expected to give anything in return.
This is a safe place where people take care of each other.
But why?
He takes his first hot shower. He eats his first tin of caviar.
What is this?
He watches his first television show while munching on his first bag of popcorn. This is what life could be. This is what life is for the people in Vault 4. Vault 4, of course, is a cautionary tale about a community ruled by unregulated scientific overlords, but it's also proof that the nuclear apocalypse of 2077 hasn't robbed our species of what makes us human. It's proof that people with different beliefs and coming from different backgrounds can still get along and become a single community. The irony is that Vault-Tec was trying to create the perfect human society. Their experiment failed, but in so doing, it inadvertently created one of the best human societies the wasteland has to offer. It's probably not perfect, but no human society is. And expecting perfection of any human society is unrealistic. It's naive. And any experiment that expects perfection is doomed to fail. What are your thoughts about Vault 4? Would you like to live here like Maximus clearly does? Or would you rather take your chances out in the wasteland? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish new Fallout videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss my next one, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have already, but you still feel like you're missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a plush for sale. My plush is ready to ship, but I have limited inventory, and I'm almost out of stock. If you want to make sure that you get one before I run out, snag one today. I've also got a shirt shop with completely unique designs that you can't find anywhere else. My designs come on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find them on other products as well, like smartphone cases, pillows, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in another way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. YouTube members get little badges that appear next to their names in the comment sections of my videos and access to ox emojis that they can use in my video comments and in the live chats of my live streams. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more Fallout videos.